these lights going out is not going to stop us now. We want Hillary in the White House, and the only way we can get her there is to vote. And we just can't walk out when we vote on our own. We've got to make sure that somebody else votes too. This is a tough race, but it's worth every effort. We have a lot to gain. We have absolutely nothing to lose by supporting Hillary, but if we don't support Hillary, we got a whole lot to lose. We will make America whole again with Hillary Clinton. The only way we can get that done is to make sure, take it seriously, vote. Tell your friends to vote, your family to vote, even people you don't know on the street. Make sure that when you pass them, tell them to vote tomorrow. Every vote counts. You know, up until 4 years ago, about 12 years, I was the only Democrat between Amarillo and Austin. It was a lonely time. But let me tell you, you sent me a friend and a partner and a good Democrat to Washington in the name of Mark Vesey. I want to thank you. It's lonely sometimes when you don't have another Democrat that you consult with right around you. But having you sending Mark Vesey helped me a lot, along with helping you. And I'm going to have him come out, and he's going to be presenting William Jefferson Clinton.
How are you doing today? It is great to be with you this morning, and let me just tell you that I'm so happy that you're here to help me welcome the next president of the United States of America, Hillary Rodham Clinton, but I hope a big Texas welcome to President Bill Clinton, who will be joining us in just a moment. We all know how important this primary is, and we need leaders who stand up for young men and women, young Texans and other Americans who deserve a chance for a good education and job training that it takes to get a good job and build a bright future. It takes strong and committed leadership to make sure hardworking men and women can earn a decent wage, have good and affordable health care, and bring opportunities to families, not just to survive, but to thrive. That is the type of leader we have in Hillary Rodham Clinton. It is why I support her as our Democratic presidential nominee, and why we must all fight tooth and nail to help ensure that she will be our next president of the United States of America. Now, all of you and me are not the only ones that feel that way about Hillary. It turns out that we have a very special guest who knows a little bit about being an effective leader and building a strong economy. I could not be prouder than to have the honor of introducing our fellow Hillary Clinton fan, our great former president, our future first gentleman, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Whoa, thank you. First of all, let's give Congressman Mark Vesey another hand. Thank you. Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson, she and I have been friends since before most of you were born. Commissioner Roy Brooks, thank you. Representative Nicole Collier, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Sal Espino, thank you so much. And I want to thank Chancellor Angela Robinson, and all the people at Tarrant County College for having us here. I love community colleges. And when I was a governor, I converted every vocational school in my state to a community college. When I was president, I became the first sitting president ever to give a commencement address at a community college. The time I left office, we had given college aid to 10 million more people, which included free tuition at all community colleges and a 20% tax credit for all of their higher education expenses. I love this, but I love it for very specific reasons that are highly relevant to this election and to your future. I like it because it's open enrollment, because nobody is eliminated from coming because of their economic circumstances, because people are welcome without regard to their race or their religion or their gender or their anything else. Just come on, let's figure out what we can do together to make it better, to learn more, to do more, to grow more, to have a better future. That's what we got to do in this country. And if you look at the debates, if you can stand it, in the Republican primary, I mean, really, wait. I mean, they spent a minute and a half calling each other liars the other night. I didn't know whether I was watching a sixth grade recess fight or a bad piece of reality TV. But I can tell you one thing. It's not good for the United States to think that is the test of leadership. So here's my case. When the president gave his last State of the Union speech a few weeks ago, he said, I know we have problems, but you should be optimistic because the United States is the best positioned big country in the world for the new century. We are for several reasons. First, we're already outperforming every other big economy. We have 14 million jobs in 5 years. That's the most new jobs we've had since that last Democrat was president, whatever his name was. I can't remember. And he said, we have 90% of our people with health insurance coverage for the first time in history. And frankly, if we could get Texas and a few other states to take the Medicaid expansion for working families, we'd be at 95, and it would take us no effort at all to get to 100 and do the other things we need to do on health care. He said we have the youngest, most diverse population of any big country. And in a world where the borders look more like nets than walls, notwithstanding what some friends in the other party say, it's a big deal to have somebody here from everywhere else. And to be young and vibrant and able to relate to people. And we have the best science and technology base. We rank first in the world according to every scientific survey. And we belong to a party that still believes in science, you know. According to every scientific survey, in the ability to generate electricity from the sun, the wind, and other clean sources. You know that in Texas because you're one of only 3 states in the country that gets a third or more of your electricity every day from the wind. Even when the politicians aren't talking. So, anyway, the president said all this. He said, so don't be afraid of change. Embrace it. Now, this election is occurring in the way it is, with the anxiety that you feel and some of the anger you see, because the president painted this beautiful picture of America's future. And yet there are lots and lots of people who look at that picture and they can't find themselves in it. 80% of people still haven't gotten a pay raise. It takes 10 years to get over one of these things and has since the 1600s. We got the jobs back early, but we didn't get the pay raises back. And people are looking for themselves in that picture. They can't see it. You've got all these young people who have already gotten out of college that are loaded up with debt and can't move out of their parents' houses because they got to stay home for free rent to pay their debt. They think they'll never be able to go to the bank and borrow money to get a home mortgage of their own, much less a small business loan. You've got all this stuff happening. Then you've got, on the other side of the fence, all these young people who look on television and see films of young African American men being shot who weren't armed, either by the police or by somebody else in the community. We see you got all these young Muslim Americans who love this country and are part of the fabric of our country being demonized. And they say, what is this? You've got all these young dreamers who are told that their parents are going to be sent back, and they may be too, and we're just going to build a wall up across the Rio Grande River. Somebody, look, this is a college. So we have just one little bit of class, okay? Someone should call those people and tell them that immigration from Mexico to the United States peaked in 2005. And that since 2010, more people from Mexico have gone back than have come here. They're not even shooting at the right target. Just stirring things up. So here's my case. Hillary for president because she wants every American to be able to look at that picture that the president painted without regard to whether they're a 10th generation American or a first generation American, without regard to the color of their skin, their sexual orientation, their you name it. She wants everybody to look in that picture and say, here I am. Here are my children. Here are my grandchildren. This is my future. We can all rise together. That's what this election's about. And with all respect, she doesn't believe we have to build walls. She thinks we have to build ladders of opportunity and tear down barriers that keep people off the ladders. And this is really important. We can create millions of jobs in this country with stuff that's right here at hand. We rank, as I said, first or second in the world in the capacity to generate electricity from our own clean sources. She wants to put up 500 million solar panels in 4 years and have every home in the United States of America completely powered by clean energy and owned by the American people, and none of that stuff can be exported. They're all jobs that are going to be here. It would be revolutionary. As you've been following, I'm sure, the events in Flint, Michigan, you have probably noticed that Flint, Michigan is nowhere near the only place now in the United States where children have elevated lead levels in their blood and where they have been exposed to other forms of pollution in their water supply. Why? Because we have not kept up with the infrastructure demands. We can create untold numbers of jobs by modernizing our water supplies. And if we do it, it's all jobs here. You can't export those jobs. The water's here, the pipes are here. Let's clean out the rusty lead pipes and give America a bright future and our children a healthy future. I'll give you another example. 2/3 of all the new jobs in America in the last 20 years have come from small business. An enormous number of percentage of the graduates of this college will go to work for small businesses. When I was president, we had the fastest rate of small business formation in our history across all racial and gender lines for basically 2 reasons. One is the Small Business Administration dramatically increased its loans to women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. I mean, dramatically, more than in the previous 40-year history of the SBA. The second is, and this benefited everybody without regard to race or gender. Second is that we required the banks to comply with a law that had been on the books that most people didn't have to comply with, called the Community Reinvestment Act, which said if you take deposits in any community, you have to loan some money there. You've got to do it. $800 billion was loaned. We can do that again. One of the reasons you ought to vote for Hillary is nearly as I can tell, she is the only candidate in either party who said a big part of our economic strategy has got to be reviving small business lending and giving every American to be a part of that. The third thing I'd like to do is get the microphone that works. Anyway, the other thing I want to say is we can bring back manufacturing to this country. We've had 900,000 manufacturing jobs come back to America since the crash. And one of the things that amazes me is how all these 3D printers are just popping up all over the country in community colleges, high schools, public libraries. There are 6-year-old things I can't imagine. But nobody can run the microphones properly. But anyway, we ought to give a degree here in that. Anyway, anyway, you get the idea. There's plenty to do. We can create lots of jobs. But in order for us to seize those jobs, those are the ladders. You still got to take down the barriers to climbing the ladders. So let's talk about what they are. First, everybody ought to be able to go to and graduate from a public college or another college, a private college, that caters to people who are working people who don't have a lot of money, and graduate debt-free. They ought to be able to graduate debt-free. Second, for the people who already have a lot of debt, and this is really important. I don't know how many of you this affects, but I'll give you. I got a little test. I'm my own little walking social science experiment now. Whenever I'm in any town, if I can, I try to go someplace and get a cup of coffee, and I'm invariably served by a young person. So I always ask this question: how long you had this job? I'll give you my last conversation. Ironically, it happened in New York City just a few nights ago. How long have you had this job? 5 years, on and off. I said, what's off? She said, that's when I'm going to college. What's on? That's when I'm paying off my debt. 5 years, back and forth, back and forth. I said, you living at home? She said, oh, yeah. She said, Mom can't help me, but at least it's free rent. Otherwise, I can never make any debt payments. And there are hundreds of thousands of people like her in America. Hundreds of thousands. So here's what Hillary's plan is. First of all, if a college loan is the only kind of loan you can't refinance. Do you know that? So, I mean, literally, right before I came down here, I went to buy a pair of jeans from a lady I do business with, and I knew she had a son that just graduated from college, and so I asked her, and she's proud of him, and she said, he's got some debt, but I think he'll get a job. And I said, what's the interest rate on this debt? 9%. I said, and I asked her, I said, you know, we've known each other a long time. You still got a home mortgage? She said, yeah. I said, did you refinance it? She said, yes. I said, and what's the interest rate on your home mortgage? She said, just under 4%. Now, here's one thing Hillary wants to do. If every single holder of student debt in the country could refinance their loan tomorrow at market interest rate, 25 million people would save an average of $2,000 just refinancing their loans. and it needs to be done. Then, she proposes to start treating accumulated student loans like a mortgage. That is, if you got a lot of student debt, you ought to have the option to collapse it, consolidate it, and pay for it over 20 years as a low fixed percentage of your after-tax income. And if you could do that, then you'd be able to move out of your parents' place. Then you'd be able to go to the bank if you wanted to borrow $50,000 to open a bakery or something. It wouldn't undermine your credit. And this is really, really important. So here's how that works. You have the option to convert all your debt, consolidate it, into one loan, pay it back as a fixed percentage of your after-tax income for up to 20 years. Then, if you decide you want to do public service work, you want to be a teacher or a nurse or a police officer or something, you can knock quite a bit off of it. $17,500 for a first year. If you decide you want to do 2 years of community service in AmeriCorps and the public service work, you can get rid of all of it for life, the whole thing. And look, this is important. We need to liberate this generation. That's a huge, huge barrier to maximizing your potential. For a lot of older Americans, health care is still a barrier. We've got to get the price of prescription drugs down, co-pays and deductibles down. And you can help even here in Texas where they won't take that Medicaid expansion. One of the things that is happening all over America to hold down costs and increase quality of care is that more and more people are joining health care plans where they pay a flat fee for keeping you healthy instead of you pay for each specific procedure, pill, or whatever. Everywhere in America this is going on. Everywhere health care is getting better and prices are going down. So that's a barrier for some people. We got to help tear it down. There are many places in America where we need police reform, where too many people have been killed just because of the color of their skin and because they're scared. But remember what we saw in San Bernardino the other day when all those people were being shot? And there were the police going in time and time, trying to save all those people's lives without regard to their race or their religion, putting themselves on the line. They were there. So you need police reform and you need the police. And we got to say both, which means we need more police on the street patrolling neighborhoods where they look like the people they're patrolling. And when something goes wrong, there needs to be a neighborhood dispute resolution mechanism so that everybody has to sit down and agree on what happened and how to stop it from ever happening again. And in America today, believe it or not, you never see them on television because they have that, and that's why you never see them on television. We can do this. We need prison reform. We got too many people in jail for nonviolent offenses. But Hillary always reminds us, and I think it's right, we can't just turn people out of prison who've been kept there for years unjustly without investing money to make sure they can find a job or go into an education and training program when they get out. And when they get out, if they were convicted of a nonviolent offense, we must make sure if they get education and training, they don't get derailed at step one by having to check a box and say they've been in prison and therefore they can't be hired. They should have a new chance at a new life. We should all do it. Support that. Now, the absence of immigration reform is a barrier that we have to face. I don't favor, and she doesn't favor, kicking these dreamers out of school and terrifying their parents. We need to grow up and pass a sensible immigration reform bill that is fair to everybody. And I think We all know that. Look at you. Look at you. If we'd had a meeting like this 50 years ago, anywhere in this county, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, most people would look like me, old gray-haired white guys. As I look out here, I'm so grateful that my demographic has not been entirely eliminated. Thank you for showing up. But, look, this is a big deal. We got to do this. It's a barrier. Just two other barriers I want to talk about. There are a lot of places in this country that have been left out and left behind. They also happen to be the places with the biggest addiction rates on prescription drugs and heroin. We need an aggressive program to fight it, and we need financial incentives to invest in those places, in coal countries, in Native American reservations, up and down America where there are small towns and rural areas where nobody's investing. We got to go together. If we're going to rise together, we've got to deal with these things together. And finally, this Supreme Court opinion is really important. This appointment. Texas has been at the epicenter of the unforgivable efforts to restrict voting rights in America. And that's what this next Supreme Court case is about. Don't kid yourself. First, they went after all these ID, all this stuff you've been through already. Now they have applied to the Supreme Court to change the one person, one vote rule. What was hallowed ground for equal opportunity in America since 1962. They now want to say, oh, no, we want to draw these districts based on the number of registered voters or eligible voters. Meaning, if you're a state representative in Texas and you represent a large number of fully documented immigrants, you may lose your seat. I mean, it's so patently transparent. I can remember when Republicans used to believe in the Voting Rights Act. I can remember when they used to think we should all be able to vote. I wish they did again. But I'm telling you, if we're all going to rise together, we got to be able to vote together. And our votes are heard and counted so that we can talk. You know, I made a joke at the stop of this remark about that last Republican debate. But I know what's going on. Nobody wants to talk to each other anymore. I mean, we were in South Carolina, you know, where Hillary had a great, great victory. And so this guy comes and he starts harassing me about her. Talking about, you know, Benghazi and all that. And the police wanted to shut him down. And I said, no, wait, let him talk. I said, sir, I'll let you talk. And all I ask is that you let me answer. So he's going and going and going, you know. He's got every little talking point from every right-wing blog place you can get. And he's going and going and going. So finally I said, okay, I've given you a lot of time now. I'd like to answer. And he literally was physically and emotionally incapable of shutting up. No, listen. He couldn't stop talking. Why? Because he knew if he stopped talking, I might be able to answer his concerns. And we must never listen to each other. We must never give each other an answer. Otherwise, we won't be able to be mad. We won't be foaming at the mouth. We won't look like we need a rabies shot. We won't be able to scream. You're laughing about this, but I'm telling you, we cannot build America in the 21st century with dysfunctional politics based on dehumanizing our adversary and everybody that disagrees with me. We cannot. And so that's the last thing I want to say. Hillary's the only person who believes that We can rise together only through inclusive economics, inclusive social policies, and inclusive politics. And that to make America safe in a dangerous world, you do need a strong military, and she had a lot to do with influencing the design of today's military as a member of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, and on a special committee recommending that we have what President Obama is using in ISIS land today. No more big land wars in the Middle East. Send the special forces in to help people who are willing to stand up for themselves and their people and their life and their future. But also, she knows in a world where you can't kill, jail, or occupy everybody that is or might be against you, you better make a few more friends. She knows that the people that pulled off that terrible massacre in San Bernardino were converted over to social media. That the real battle we're fighting today for the future of the world is going on inside the brains of more than 1 billion people. And therefore, she has said, you've heard this on the debate, that the Republicans are making a terrible mistake demonizing Muslims. The moderate Muslims in America have to help us win this battle. People should never, ever be demonized for their faith. It's against our Constitution. It's against our culture. It is dumb. It won't help us. And you know, I think it's great. I love that I live in a country that has Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Baha'i, you name it. And one of the reasons we still seem to have the most religious country in the world is that we don't tell you what religion you have to practice or that you have to have one. And we never have. But I'll tell you this. If we're going to win this fight, we have got to have all hands on board. We're winning this fight in the battle for the brains, the minds, and hearts of people around the world. And I don't think there's any question who's best qualified to do that. So I want you to give her a big vote tomorrow. And I want you to get some people to help. Now and later, Texas should be a purple state. Texas should be. 44 years ago, when she was very young, Hillary came to South Texas to register Hispanic voters who had not been registered in the past. That's before our friends thought they could actually keep people from voting, so they had to then discourage people from registering in the first place. It's gotten a lot more bald now. But from that day to this, we have always believed in the promise of this state. She has always seen in the faces of the people who live here a glimpse of the future which might be achieved if we could simply all rise together. You're not asking for too much. All you're asking for is the economics of everybody, a society of everybody, a politics of everybody, and a foreign policy which empowers us to win the argument about how the world should live and what we can become. I'm telling you, everything the president said is true. We are the best positioned country in the world for the future. But that's what elections are about. We have to seize it. And this is a dramatic, clear, unambiguous choice. Choose right. Go bring it home for her tomorrow. Thank you.